Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar for Sage 50 Payroll, which is Get Your Payroll Done, focusing on processing payroll. My name's Alice, and I'm going to be your host and presenter for the session, which I'm expecting to last around 45 minutes today. I'm also joined by my colleague Tina, who's going to be answering your questions throughout the session too. So a big thank you to Tina in advance. A little look at what we're going to be covering today too. So I've kind of broken down the webinar into two sections. The first one's only a short one, but that's preparing to process. So just some tasks that we'd recommend that you do before you actually process payroll. And then the main chunk of the webinar is going to be focusing on processing payroll. So I'll show you a pay run start to finish, focusing on 5 key tasks. And as usual, we will finish with some further support, so upcoming webinars, information on the Help Centre, etc. And yes, hopefully some time to finish answering your questions at the end too. So this webinar is going to be ideal for anyone new to payroll, as we'll be breaking down the main steps of a pay run. But for anyone who already uses payroll, I do have a lot of top tips and things throughout too, so you should still take something away from the session. Now, as I said, the first section is preparing to process, so basically 4 steps to check, just in order to make sure that you're prepared to process your payroll. So you would do these tasks before you go ahead and enter your payments and update the records and everything like that. So step 1, this is going to be to add any new starters that you've had join your company since the last time that you did payroll. They'll hopefully have a P45 or a starter checklist, that was previously called a P46, and you'll be able to use the information on those forms to enter them as a new starter. Now, a couple of ways that you can enter new starters on payroll, but generally it's going to be either via the Quick Employee option or the Employee Wizard option too. So both of those options in payroll, they're going to allow you to enter the details of a new starter and any mandatory information, so information that's needed to set up the record, that's going to be marked with an asterisk symbol. Now, if you're curious or wanting more detail on this process, I have recently ran a webinar covering starters and leavers, and I cover that whole process start to finish, including demonstrations too. And you can find that in the recording section of our webinar page, so that's sage.co.uk/webinars. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 to prepare to process is going to be to enter any absences this pay period that would qualify for a statutory payment. So this is things like sick pay, maternity, paternity pay, etc. So you would enter the dates and the information for these before you process payroll, so before you process any payments and things. And this is just to make sure that they're included and calculated in that enter payment step that we'll be doing. And something to bear in mind for statutory payments is that they'll pay up to and including the process date, so anything due for the days that are in the current period. Step 3, this is going to be to put any employees who are not being paid on hold, and this is to exclude them from the pay run. It is a little drop down in the employee record to do that, just on the employment tab, as you can see on that screenshot on the right hand side. So these are employees who still work for you, they're still employed, but maybe they're a casual worker and they don't work consistently. So there might be some payment periods where they're not actually receiving any payments. Now, if that's the case, HMRC still need to be informed of this. It is still going to be sent in the FPS that they're on hold. Otherwise, HMRC will be wondering why there's missing periods for the employees. So set their status to on hold in the record, and HMRC, as I say, will be notified in the FPS of this. And then lastly, step number 4. So this is for anyone who receives electronic notifications from HMRC, is to check the IR secure mailbox or the HMRC secure mailbox in the programme. And this is just to check for any tax code or student loan notifications and things like that that will need to be applied. Probably more important at the start of the tax year too. A lot of people do receive notices at this time of year, so it's definitely worth checking specifically now. If you don't receive notices electronically, still check your government gateway portal or wherever you would normally check for these notices, and just make sure that any changes are applied, just so you're ready to go with processing your payroll. And again, we do have webinars covering these topics for you. If you don't use the mailbox but you want to, I do have one just covering exactly what it is, how to set it up and how to use it too. Now, I have already checked this list. I've actually entered maternity pay for one of my employees too, and I do already have somebody who's on hold this period as well, so I've already checked that. But once you've done it and you've checked this list and you've done these tasks, you will be ready to go ahead and process your payroll. So that brings us on to the main section of the webinar. Now, I am going to process and demonstrate a full pay run start to finish, but I'm going to focus on 5 key tasks, starting with setting the process date. So this is going to determine the tax period that you're going to process for and the pay date, which is reported to HMRC in your submission, so things like your FPS. And because of this, we do advise to set this day to the day that you're paying your employees. We'll then move on to entering the payments. So this is making sure that the employees are getting paid the right amount, but it also includes things like deductions, any company loan repayments, attachment of earnings orders, and statutory payments and things too. So you can double check everything like that in there. Next is producing the pay slips and any pre-update reports that you might need to check. So just to kind of double check the values and things, make sure everything's correct. And you'll do that before you then update the records. So that's step 4 there. So updating the records, this step mainly just confirms the pay values in payroll, but it also moves this payment record, like that kind of payment, to the employee's history, and just kind of secures that payment there and kind of sets that in stone. So that's step 4. And then step 5 is submitting to HMRC. So this will be, in today's example, this will be your full payment submission, often abbreviated to FPS. And this is going to report the employee and payment details to HMRC. So it will also include any new starters or leavers with their information, if you've had any, student loan information and things like that as well. And it must be submitted on or before your pay date. Now, there are more steps in between these that you can do, as you'll see shortly, depending on how you process payroll as to whether you do them or not. So I will touch on a couple more of these throughout the session as well, including some top tips, as I said, but these are the basic steps that we're going to focus on today of processing payroll. So what's a better place to start than the beginning? So first thing we're going to take a look at is the process date. This can be changed in a few ways in Payroll, so you can either do that as you're opening the program and entering your username and password, or the first option in the Payroll tasks is changing your process date. So that's how we're going to do it today. Now, HMRC guidance is that this date must be the date that the employees receive the pay, unless that falls on a non-banking day. So if that's the case, you might be paying your employees a bit earlier or later than normal. Lots of bank holidays coming up in April and May as well, just to be aware of and bear this in mind for. But it is important just to still make sure that your process date is set to the date that the employees are receiving their pay. Not only is this important to make sure that you're reporting everything correctly to HMRC, but it's also important in case any of your employees are receiving universal credit, for example. A different date can affect this for the employees. So with that in mind, let's go straight to a demo. And I'm just going to begin my pay run by setting the process date. So today I am going to work through my pay run using the payroll tasks, which are found just in the payroll section in the bottom left. And it's just this list of tasks here on the left. But you do have other options if you prefer a more visual way of working or you're new to payroll, you might actually prefer the process map. And you can turn this on in View, Change View, and Process Map. And that is what this is going to look like. You can change the size of it as well if you need to, just using that scroll bar there. But this is going to include the same steps. You do get a couple of extras as well. So you've got the IR Secure mailbox as well to check notices there. But it's just going to show it in like a flow chart kind of layout instead. So whatever you would prefer, but it's going to be a case of working through the steps, either through the process map here or the tasks. So totally up to you. I am going to work through using the task source, so a quick little tip to turn off the process map. Just click the employee section, and then back to payroll. And we'll go ahead and click on change process date. So I am going to set this to my pay date. As I said, you can also do it when you're entering the login details to open the company. You'll see this kind of same option there to use the calendar icon there to change it. Now for me, I run a monthly payroll and the process date is going to be the last day of the tax month, of the month. So for me, it's going to be 30th of April, 2025. And once I've selected that date, I'll also be able to see the relevant tax period information. So it's tax week 4, tax month 1, and then of course the tax year as well. So this is the first payday that I'm going to be processing of the new tax year. And I'll just click OK, and that is the first step done. So that's the process date changed. We can also see that reflected in the bottom right corner. So this is a really good place just to kind of check at a glance, especially if you're kind of in the middle of your pay run, just to check what your process date's set to. So we can see same information there, and that is where your process date is. Now, next step that we're going to go through is entering the payments. But that's all the way down here. There are a couple more things in between that, so I just want to touch on a couple of them first. So if you use Sage HR, so if you use that and like upload the pay slips to there and you use Core HR, for example, you do also have the option of importing the employee data to see if there's any updates to your employee's information. Always take a backup before you import anything. But if you use Sage HR for new starters and leavers and things, you can check if there's any to pull through and import their information. If the employees update their own personal information on Sage HR, so if they've changed their address or something like that, you would be able to import those changes straight to payroll. Or if you use Sage HR to process like holidays and sickness and things like that, you will also have the opportunity to import any absence notifications as well. Like, we do have webinars covering this in more detail, but I did just want to mention it at this point. So this would be something that you would do before you go ahead and enter the payments. And that was just the import employee data option. But after this, I am going to go ahead and move on to selecting which employees I'd like to pay. If you've got multiple pay frequencies or you've got employee groups set up, something really handy is going to be using this outline, which you can toggle on and off using this icon. And it's just this section here. So we can see I've actually got mine filtered to the payment frequencies of the employees here. Obviously, I've only got monthly employees, but if I had weekly, I'd be able to kind of separate them in there and select them in here. Obviously monthly, so I can just go ahead and select them in there. And it just helps to be able to process them without accidentally selecting other people. Now, we did recently run a payroll spring clean webinar where we also showed you how to set up your own employee groups and assign employees to them. So that recording will be available very soon to watch. We do have another session coming up in May for that too. And it will also show you how to filter the outline for different things. So if you process payroll a department at a time instead, you can actually change these filters to show departments instead of the payment frequencies, which is the default. But that's everyone selected. I only process monthly employees, so I'm absolutely fine to be either in the monthly or the all employees section. And I do want to mention as well, don't worry if you've got people who are on hold or leavers in this selection as well. That's fine. It will actually be deselected as you open up the enter payments option, just to make sure that you don't accidentally put through any payments for them. So as you can see, I do have somebody on hold. I do have a leaver as well, so I'm going to leave them highlighted. I do want to show you the window that will come up for them. And something else to touch on before enter payments. So you might have a lot of changes from one period to the next in terms of payment values or payment hours. You might actually want to use the reset payments option to reset some of those values before you go ahead and enter this period's payments. So let me show you what this looks like. It's going to bring up the reset payments wizard for you to kind of work through. And you'll just go ahead and click next. Always select selectively reset, just so you don't accidentally clear everything. But you've got the option to selectively reset and also select which employees you want included in this process. So you'll just select them as necessary, click next. And this is where you can decide if you'd like to return to default, clear, or retain the values against the hours and number and rate of particular pay elements. So really, really handy option if you've got a lot of changes from one period to the next. You'd be able to work through this, including other things. You've got like childcare vouchers, statutory payments and things as well. And you'd work through that wizard, resetting what you need to or setting back to default, and then you would just go ahead and click finish. So it just helps to kind of avoid confusion with existing numbers and things like that. And then one other option as well, a different way of entering the payments is timesheet entry. I don't have time to go through that one today, but we do have more information linked on the handout if you do want to know a little bit more about that. It's just kind of entering the payments in more of a grid format, so it might be a little bit quicker for you if you've got a lot of employees to process. But today we are going to focus on enter payments, so I'll go ahead and click that. And this is the window that I wanted to show you. So because I've got somebody on hold highlighted and somebody who's a leaver, we will see this message. So this message will only come up if one of these 5 things apply. So if you've got leavers, people on hold, people who've already been updated, so obviously you can only be updated and paid once per tax period, or you've had someone with a change of pay frequency, for example, this message will come up just prompting you to deselect them, just so payments aren't processed for them. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes. And this will come up with the enter payments window for you. And it's going to come up with that first employee in the selection. So employee number 1 first of all. So this is the enter payments screen. And we've got different tabs set up along the top. So we've got payments, deductions. If you had any attachments, you would add them in here. Loans. We've also got a page for statutory sick pay or parental leave as well. We've got the summary tab. So this has a payments side and a deductions side just to help you kind of take a glance and check those values for the employee. And you do also have an information tab. So this has got different sections on figures. So if you do want more detail on income tax there or pension, you've got different figures there to kind of break down those the kind of totals and things in a bit more detail. And lastly, you do have a notes tab. So if there's anything that you need to make a note of for this employee, for example. At the bottom of most of these tabs, you do have a kind of summary going from gross to net, including the tax and national insurance for the current period for the employee. So that is on most of the tabs there. And you do also have an employer's button at the bottom, and that's just to help you check the national insurance contributions and the pension contributions for the employer for the current period as well. And you've also got that button there in the summary tab too. So employee number 1, this employee has their salary in here, so nothing else to change for them. They do just get that monthly salary there. So I've got the salary pay element. I do also have an overtime and a bonus pay element assigned to them, but we can see there's nothing in the hours and number value, therefore there's nothing in the amount either, so it's just the salary that they're getting paid. But once you finish checking the payments and you'd work through and kind of check the rest of the tabs, you can also check the summary. So I can see I've got the pension contributions for the employee. I'll be able to check the employer's contributions and click OK. And once I'd finished checking this employee, what I would do is just click Save Next and move on to the next employee in my selection. And you can confirm who that is at the top. You've got the employee reference number and the employee's name as well. So let's go ahead and enter these payments. I only have a couple of changes to make for a couple of my employees. So this is going to be kind of sped up a little bit for the webinar, but you would just check what you need to for them and then click Save Next to work on to the next employee. So no changes for employee number 3 either, so I'll click Save Next. But I do have an adjustment to make for employee number 4. So this is the employee who's on statutory maternity pay. I've already entered these dates and they have already received a few months of pay as well. So if I check the summary tab, I can actually see it's already calculating the SMP for the current period. And remember, this is calculated up to and including the process date. Now, the adjustment that I'm going to make, this does depend on your company policy, whether this is something that you would do. But the employee, they might just be getting paid that SMP, or you might actually top up the SMP with salary to pay them the normal wage. And that's actually what I would like to do. So as a company, we do like them to receive their full basic pay as normal, which for this employee per month is £2,047.50. Now, if we just look at the total gross pay in the summary tab here, we can see that's currently too much. So what Payroll's doing currently is adding the SMP on top of that salary. So they're getting too much. So I'm going to use something called the Make Up Basic option, and this is going to work out how much salary is needed to top up this SMP to get to their full basic pay. And I'll show you how this works. So first of all, I'm just going to go to the Payments tab. I'm just going to make sure I've got their full wage in here as normal. So this is the amount that I'm specifying I'd like them to get paid for this Make Up Basic option. So £2,047.50. I've got the hours and number value here at 1. I've got a summary. Of course, I've got that SMP amount there. And if I click on Make Up Basic, It's just going to confirm what this option does. So it's going to reduce the salary to accommodate for that strategy payment. So I'll click yes. And straight away, I can see that total gross pay there has reduced to the amount that I'd specified, so £2,047.50. We've still got that maternity pay, and it's worked out that on top of this, I need £1,248 to make it up to that full pay. So Payroll's reduced that hours and number value to accommodate for the maternity pay. And that is the adjustment that I need to make for this employee. So I'm happy with their payment now. At this point, I'm just going to go and click Save Next. And that will bring me on to the next employee. Now, I did have somebody on hold in between them, so notice it's just skipped straight ahead to employee number 6. And again, no changes here, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of skip through the employees. Now, obviously, you would do this in a lot more detail than I am. I'm just doing it quickly for the webinar. I've got a mix of salaried workers and some people who are paid hourly too. And if you need to edit anything in here, just work through the tabs as necessary. You can also add any payments that you need to. So if you need to add certain pay elements that you've set up, you can just use the add payment option there. And then of course, check the summary tab as well, which will give you an overview of the payments and deductions for the period. Perfect, but this is my last employee. So this is actually my new starter, employee number 12. And they started with me on the 10th of April. As we can see, they do have their full month salary in here already. And that's because I specified that I specified what they get yearly, I specified that they're monthly, and Payroll's basically converted that into a monthly salary for me. But since this employee isn't working the full month, obviously they started on the 10th, I'm actually needing to adjust this pay to work out how much salary they're going to get for the days that they've worked. To do this, I just need to know the actual days that they've worked this pay period, and I need to divide that by the total working days for this employee this period. So just to show you an example, so this employee, like all of my employees, is monthly and they work Monday to Friday. So in April, which is the pay date I'm processing, this means that there's a total of 22 working days for this employee in April. And since they started on the 10th, they'll be working 15 days out of those 22. Now do bear in mind that'll change depending on your employees' working days and working patterns, but once you've figured out those, just using this calculator icon, you can do this manual adjustment. So make sure you've got that full pay for the month in there or for the pay period. And then I'm going to do the days that they've worked, so 15 days that they've worked in April, divided by the total working days in the period, so that's 22. I'll click equals, I'll click tab on my keyboard, and we can see Payroll has adjusted that salary accordingly. So out of this full month salary of about £2,333, Payroll's worked out that for 15 days worth, that's how much they'll get. And we can see that reflected there and updated straight away in that summary too. So that is my adjustments all done. Everyone's payments are now entered for April. But just a little kind of top tip to mention, if you are needing to go to the employee's record for anything, so if you need to check something quickly or add something, just to save you from closing out event payments and losing where you are in your employee list, you can click this employee icon just in the top left, and this is going to be a shortcut to the employee record. So you'd be able to make any changes that you need to, add anything in there. And once you close it, when you've saved the record, it'll take you straight back to where you were in enter payments. So this will be really, really good if you've got a lot of employees, just to save you losing your place in there. But that was a little bit more about entering the payments. So just a bit of a recap before we move on to the next slide. So I just want to make you aware of those options again before enter payments. You do have the reset payments option. So just a kind of way to reset some payment values from one period to the next. You've also got the timesheet entry option, and I've linked more information on the handout there. And something else, so if you do use the pensions module in Sage 50 Payroll, after you've entered the payments, you would then be able to run the pension assessment. And what this would do is assess your employees' age and wage and determine whether they're eligible to be enrolled in your pension scheme. We do have a whole webinar going over the pension assessment as well, so just bear that in mind. So I'm not able to go through all of these options today, as I've said, but just know that those options are there. And as I say, yeah, more information is linked there. In terms of the enter payment screen though, in the top left, you've got that shortcut to the employee record. And then just below that, you've got the different tabs that you'll be able to work through. So this is where you would enter payments, deductions, etc. You also have the summary tab, which will be a summary of the employee's payments and deductions, as well as notes and information too. So a little tip, if the employee's pay isn't looking as expected, I would advise just checking through these tabs. Maybe there's accidentally been a deduction added, or there's kind of an incorrect value in one of those. So really good idea just to kind of check through and make sure that there's nothing there that shouldn't be. Don't forget that make up basic option as well in the summary tabs. If you are needing to work out how much salary you need to top up a statutory payment by, that is a really, really handy option there, depending on your company policies. You've then got the main part of the screen, so this is where you would enter the hours and the rates against the elements. It's also where you would do a manual adjustment if you needed to, using that calculator icon. At the bottom there, you've got that gross to net kind of summary of the employee's pay this period. And then last but not least, the save/next button. So that is going to save obviously the calculations and payments that you've done and take it on to the next employee that you've got highlighted in your list. But moving on to step number 3, so the next one is going to be producing the pay slips and the pre-update reports. And there are 3 different ways that you can produce the pay slips in Sage 50 Payroll. So you've got the option of online pay slips. Now this is our recommended way. This is where you would upload the pay slips to Sage HR, and the employees would be able to log into the online portal to view those pay slips at any time. So really, really convenient and quick for them to do. We do have webinars covering this as well if you do want to know what it is, how to set it up and how to use it. The online payslips functionality of Sage HR is actually included for free in your payroll subscription, so may as well make the most of that. We've also got the option of email payslips, so you'd be able to configure one of the email payslip layouts, and if you wanted to send them via Outlook or Gmail, for example, you'd be able to do so. You do also have the option of password protecting the payslips via email as well. And then third option there is printing the pay slips. So you'd be able to print them onto plain paper or any company stationery that you might have. So I'm going to show you where to find these different payslip options. I do also want to show you a few of my favourite pre-update reports to run. There's a couple that I'd absolutely recommend that you run before you update the records. So pre-update reports then, we're just going to click straight onto this task from the left-hand side. And it's going to bring up this window for you with the different sections on the left, including any reports that you've favorited. So we can see I do have a couple of reports in here, including a pay slip, and then 2 other reports that I'd like to show you as well. If there are any more layouts and things that you want to favorite, all you need to do is click that little icon there, the little star, and that's going to move it to your favorites. So to find the pay slips, first of all, you're just going to go to the pay slip section. This is like a little collapsible section. You've got options for dot matrix. You've got email as well, so different kind of email layouts there that you could configure to send via email. You've also got laser, so this is the most popular way to produce pay slips here. Loads of different options depending on what you'd like that to show, including pay slips as well for self-seal stationery too. But today I'm just going to show you that standard laser payslip, 2 per A4 sheet. So I'm just going to click that preview icon on the right-hand side. Now, because I've got some employees set up for the online services or email, it's just asking if I want them to be included in this selection too. Totally up to you, but I'm going to click yes and load up these payslips. Here we go, I'll just make that a little bit bigger as well. So these are all of the payslips for the employees, 2 per A4 sheet as the layout specified. And you do have the option to print in the top left and also export. So if you wanted to save these as a PDF, for example, you absolutely can. Something to be aware of though, if you do print a laser payslip straight from here, it's not going to print with this green background. So it's just going to print with those words and numbers. The green on here, it's more of an indicator of what the payslips will look like when they're printed onto stationery. Now, if you did want to print it exactly like this, what I'd advise is just export it first. So export the payslips save them as a PDF, and then print them. And then that's going to make sure they print with that green background. Perfect, but a couple more reports just to quickly show you. So payment summary part 1 and 2, these are really, really good reports to run before you update the records. And they're going to be found in in the summary section. And this is in alphabetical order. So I'll just scroll down. Great, and I'll just preview part 1 first of all. So this is a really, really good report, and it's going to show you a summary, show you a breakdown of each employee's total gross pay, all the way through different deductions to their net pay. So we've got different things like tax, we've got student loan information, employee pension contributions, any statutory or parental payments. So you can see employee number 4's maternity pay, for example. We've also got totals at the bottom. So this is a really, really good layout and a good report to run at a pre-update stage if you're not quite sure what reports to run. We've also got part 2. So this is a very similar layout, still dead clear to read, but this one's kind of focused more on the employer side of things. So if we just preview this too, and again, I'll zoom in for you. Still got the employees on the left-hand side, and we've got the different columns along here with totals along the bottom. But this time, of course, it's got information on deniable earnings. We've got employer national insurance contributions, employer NI rebates and things like that. Also the employer pension contributions. So you do have information on that too. And that's the payment summary part 2. I do want to mention we have a webinar coming up on report favourites and selections. So if you do want to know a bit more about the reports and different reports that you can run, also report selections, which is a really, really underrated feature of Payroll, I like to think. We do have a webinar coming up on that where I'll be taking you through all of those options. So if you email or print the payslips, the pre-update report is where you'll do that. If you use the online payslips though, that is a slightly different step. So I'm just going to click on that to quickly show you how quick it is to upload those two. So slightly different process, but still very easy to do. Any employees who have a payslip available this period and who are set up for the online services will show in here. And you'll be able to get these uploaded for them in a matter of clicks. So you can either publish the payslips immediately, or you can schedule them to go up on a selected date. Now, I normally like my payslips to get be scheduled for 2 days before the payday. So my payday for April is the 30th. I'd like to schedule them to be published on the 28th. And once those are published, we will get a notification. Yep, so they've been scheduled to go up on the 28th. And once that date comes around, they'll be published. The employees will be notified and they'll be able to view their payslip on the portal and kind of do whatever they need to do if they need to download that or print it out or whatever they need to there. But that is the payslips and the reports sorted. So a little bit of a recap there before step 4. So remember there are 3 different ways that you can produce the payslips in Sage 50 Payroll, and I've linked more information on each of those options on the handout. And a few reports I'd recommend running at a pre-update stage are the payment summaries part 1 and 2. So they're both found in the summary section of the pre-update reports. And don't forget, if there are any reports that you run on a regular basis, you can favourite those, so you've got them easily accessible next time that you process the payroll. Now, next step in today's payroll, this is going to be updating the records. So what this does is confirm the current pay values and the payments that you've added. It also adds them to the employee's history. After you've updated the records, you do have more options. So you could post the nominal link if required. So if you need to post the salary journals across 2 accounts. And also if you've got anybody leaving you, this is when you would make them a leaver and produce the P45 for them. So after you update the records, but before you submit to HMRC. And then the last key task that I'm going to be showing you is submitting a HMRC. So it is going to be that full payment submission, which needs to be submitted on or before the pay date. So let's go ahead and do both of these steps now. So step number 4, we are going to update the records. Now, just make sure you've got everybody highlighted again, which I still do. Also at this point, double check your process date. So remember, you can see that on the bottom right corner. And we're just going to go ahead and click Update Records. Now, I'd always advise taking a backup at this point. This is the ideal point to take a pre-update backup. So if you do need to come back and make any corrections, or for whatever reason you need to get this data back if something goes wrong, for example, this is going to be a really, really good backup for you to take. So click on that. That'll take you through the backup wizard. And I would advise naming it appropriately too. So I could call mine, April pre-update backup 2526, just something like that, so you know exactly what that is. And once you've taken the pre-update backup, you can run through the Update Records wizard. So I'll just click Next. With it being the first period of the new tax year as well, I do get a couple of reminders about tax codes, things like small employers relief and employment allowance as well. But I'll just click Next. I'll confirm the employees that I've got in this selection, and then I'll click Finish. And that is the records updated. So I can see now the last updated date has updated to my April pay date, and that's exactly what we want to see. Also notice the employee on hold and the leaver, so because they weren't included in the process, obviously their last updated date hasn't changed, and that is absolutely fine. Something else to show you, so in the employees records, if we go to the history tab, we can now see that April's pay date is showing in there as the first period of the tax year that's been updated. You can also see in the employee's history, we've got the total gross pay for the current tax year just at the bottom too. Now, just going back to these payroll tasks on the left, next step would be nominal link if that's something that you use. We do have a webinar coming up on this in May if you want to know more, but I don't actually use this, so I'm going to skip this for now. And at this point as well, if you did have anybody leaving you, this is the point where you'd process them as a leaver and produce the P45. So after you've updated the records to make sure that you've updated their final pay, but before you submit the full payment submission, as the leaver details do need to be submitted on that. But today, the last step, so the fifth and final step that I'm going to be showing you is the full payment submission. And this does need to be submitted on or before the employees are paid. This is going to report the pay run to HMRC, so it's going to include information on the payments and deductions, so your liabilities for the current period. It's also going to include any starters or leavers that you've had. And yeah, on or before the pay date is the deadline for the FPS. Now, something else that you'll see if you've had anyone on hold is this window, and it's just asking you to decide whether to include the employee in the FPS. So we've just got a little tick box to decide that. So employee number 5 have just gone on hold this period, so I am going to include them for this submission just to send a little flag to HMRC, just to inform them that they're on hold this period. But after this, I won't need to include them in the FPS until they're being paid again and their status is changed back. So only send this flag the period that the employee goes on hold. I'll click Submit. That's going to then bring up the full payment submission window. I'll click Continue. Check off my company details and gateway registration details in here, and then click Submit. And this is going to be the summary window. So this is a summary of the information that's going to be sent across. There is more information sent in the background as well, but this is just kind of an overview. So obviously we've got the different employees there with their liability on the right-hand side, total liability at the top there, and we can see employee number 12, my new starter. We've got that start date for them getting sent across too. But I'll just click Submit and wait for that to go across. And once it has been sent, you will get kind of confirmation of that. You are able to print the submission log if you'd like to as well, just to kind of have your own record that that's been submitted. But if we just go to e-submissions, just to point out as well, you do have the e-submissions log. So this is going to show you, it is going to keep a log of all of the submissions that have been sent from the companies. If you just need to double check whether anything's been sent, when it was sent and what was included on that submission, you do have that option there to kind of view all of those. But similar to the last updated date, we can see now the last FPS date has also updated to my April pay run. And that is the fifth and final key task that I'm going to be demonstrating in this part of the webinar. and that is my pay run complete. So just a little recap of what we've done there. So first of all, we updated the records that confirmed those current pay values and also moved them to the employee's history. And we then submitted the full payment submission to HMRC. So just a reminder, that needs to be submitted on or before the employee's pay date. And remember, you can get this information on the handout, but just a little reminder of what the submission includes. So any start or relief information, you will also see those start or leave dates in the submission window. Employee details, any payments subject to tax, and you will also it will also send over tax, national insurance, and student loan contributions and things too. But that is a basic pay run, and that is the kind of 5 basic key tasks that you'll need to complete. Obviously, as you saw, there are more tasks in between those, but it just depends on what your company does and what you need to use in payroll. And just because the pay run is done, that doesn't mean that all of your tasks are complete. So very important, you do still have month-end tasks to do with payroll. So you might need to run more reports. You might need to send your pension data to your provider or submit the employer payment summary as well. So if you reclaim strategy payments, for example, you will also need to do that. So a kind of part 2 to this webinar, we are also running a Get Your Payroll Done month-end tasks, which focuses on all of these month-end tasks. And my colleague Duncan will be taking you through those tasks on the 22nd of April. So that is our next session for that webinar. So if you do want to kind of follow on from this one and learn a bit more about those month-end tasks, definitely get yourself signed up for those at sage.co.uk/webinars. But that does bring us to the end of the webinar. So we do have just a couple of minutes left to go through some further support available to you all. And I just want to start with those upcoming webinars. So of course, I did mention that month-end one, 22nd of April, but we've also got report favourites and selections. We've got variance reporting, and we've got a couple more webinars as well on the Sage HR Showcase. So this one is going to showcase the leave management module, as well as our next HR advice webinar. So if any of you deal with HR, the next topic that we're going to be going through with our expert advisors from Advisor Plus is going to be covering redundancy, due pay and restructure. So that is on the 29th of April. Still loads more coming after that. We've been scheduling loads of webinars for the rest of April and May as well, going into May and June. So head to sage.co.uk/webinars, or you can click register now on the handout to view what's coming up and get yourself signed up for them. We also have the Sage Help Centre. So this is sage.co.uk/help. If you do need a bit of extra information on a certain topic, or you're looking for a particular demonstration video, just type in that topic in the Help Centre and you will get a whole kind of list of search results come up for that topic. Access all of those different support guides as well. We do have a webinar section, so this is going to go through all of those upcoming webinars, as well as a whole section on recordings too, if you've missed anything. And if you do need to get in touch, so if you need technical support, for example, we do have the contact options on there too. And then lastly, Sage University, so that's sageu.com. If you do want to set up a free account on here, you'll be able to access different e-learning and bite-sized learning courses on Sage 50 Payroll or other Sage products that you might have with us, such as Sage 50 accounts. And once you've kind of completed this training, it does also give you the opportunity to earn certification for that training too. So really great way to expand your knowledge on a whole variety of Sage products. But that has brought us to the end of the webinar for Get Your Payroll Done, Process Payroll. It looks like we've answered most of the questions, to be honest, but yeah, hopefully you've learned something new. We would love to see you on some more webinars in the future. And from myself and Tina, it is goodbye for now.